If you or a loved one has been on Depo Provera and has suffered from extreme side effects, you haven't already seen something like this over the course of the past month, I must assure you that you will in the next few weeks, whether it's on radio, TV, here, because of some developments. So here are kind of the basic facts and the truths about the Depo Provera lawsuit, with an important ethical caveat. And that is, I posted about this on another platform a couple weeks ago, because one of my best friends is one of the ones handling these cases. And unfortunately, I was so overwhelmed with emails and messages from people who had experienced this very thing. And now I'm helping out that friend of mine. To be clear, he's the lead on it. He's a better litigator. He's also better looking. He's got better hair. He's smarter than me. I hate him, basically. But there's a couple things that you should know about these cases, which involve brain tumors or spine tumors, specifically ones called meningiomas. Called that because of where they grow. First, the sort of headline part. This is the one you're gonna hear all the time, and you're probably gonna freak out. Don't. But there's also some really important additional context here. Okay, so last year, around March of 2024, a study came out overseas showing that women who had taken the birth control, Depo Provera, which is essentially a synthetic hormone, a 3-month supply's worth that's injected into your body, were like 500% more likely to develop a brain tumor than those who hadn't taken it. Which you're understandably like, hold the phone. That is really deceiving. The chance of developing a brain tumor if you are not on Depo Provera is unbelievably low. So yes, over 5 times more likely is a crazy number, but it's still 5 times more likely than a very low number, which is still even 5x, a very, very low number. That said, here's why it matters. I can tell you from experience here, because over the last few days, I've had video meetings with women who have gone through this. Those women don't care that it was only 500% more likely than a very small chance, because for them, that chance was them. Yes, a very realistic response is to be like, it's a medication. Of course there are side effects. And to be fair, this was a revolutionary product. I talked about this on here before, but like when I started my career as an attorney, most of what I did was pro bono work representing victims of sexual assault, sexual harassment. In that field, unfortunately, there's a significant group of victims that are part of a vulnerable population. For instance, populations that aren't able to remember to take a pill every single day. So getting an injection every 3 months, which also has, health benefits that many populations were looking for besides just the contraceptive portion, is really appealing. Yes, absolutely. Anytime you put something into your body, there's a risk. There's always an argument to be made to say, wait, we want companies to be innovative. We want them to, come out with these products that can change people's lives. Are they supposed to sort of warn against every possible thing imaginable that could happen? Which is important to remember when I tell you this, and that is around 2015, which is 10 years ago, Pfizer started warning about the possibility of these exact brain and spine tumors in Canada and Europe. They did not warn about them in the United States. I'll get into that in a second. Tumors have to have a very specific name in order to qualify for this specific suit, and that's a meningioma. Name like that because they grow around the meninges, essentially membrane layers that cover your brain and your spine. By and large, they're benign, meaning non-cancerous in like 90% of cases. However, there's only so much room up here. So when those meningiomas grow, they do things like push on other parts of your brain. So we've been seeing a lot of side effects, the most common of which, as you can probably guess, are headaches. There's weakness, there's fatigue, there's vision problems, there's hearing problems, difficulty speaking, cognitive issues with memory, concentration, anxiety, depression, and for a not insignificant number of people who have been diagnosed with this, which again, still very low probability, seizures, epilepsy. Sometimes, if it's in the spine, you might get things like difficulty walking or falling down. Yes, they are very rare. That does not discount the impact that it has made on a whole lot of people still. Pfizer, which is one of the largest companies in the world, and which, by the way, has been making Depo Provera since 1992 under FDA approval, has made a whole lot of money off this. And claim what all pharmaceutical companies do in instances like this, and that's something called preemption. Say they told the FDA that they wanted to warn about this thing, and the FDA, so Pfizer claims, said, no, don't do that. Very frequently, the argument that is made in these cases to say, hey, we tried, very often fails for obvious reasons. First being, you're probably going to need some sort of evidence that says the FDA literally sent you a letter or whatever it is saying, do not warn people about this. You're good. That is typically unlikely. Not to say it doesn't happen, because it does. The other element of this is it's a little bit of a double-edged sword to even bring up the preemption argument. Bringing it up also acknowledges the fact that you are aware of the risk, which is why it was warned about in Canada and Europe 10 years ago. The reason why, if you haven't already, you're going to start to see a lot of things on the television or radio, etc. A couple weeks ago, what's known as an MDL formed. MDL is a multi-district litigation. It's not a class action. That's important, and I'll explain why. MDL is essentially when you have a whole bunch of plaintiffs who have been hurt in some way, usually a similar way. Facts are not identical because all of these plaintiffs have different degrees to which they've experienced the side effects and injuries and damages. There's enough commonalities there that the system wants to say this is going to be a disaster if we attempt to litigate this in courts all around the country. They form this MDL, they decide where it's placed. This one is going to be placed in the Northern District of Florida. Litigate out a handful of cases from firms all throughout the country, essentially bellwether cases, to get an idea for what it looks like for every other case around the country. On how that goes, you typically get a defendant, in this case Pfizer, if they come to a conclusion at the end of that multi-district litigation in that Florida court that says, this is really bad. You need to do something about this, Pfizer. They basically go around to all the firms throughout the country that have plaintiffs, and they decide based on tiers of how bad an injury or damage was the settlement offer is going to be, versus a class action where everyone is injured in quite the same way and typically gets the same amount of damages. DL is different because it actually looks into individual circumstances for each. Is it a guarantee that we succeed on these, all the firms succeed on these? No, of course not. But a lot of people are saying that the science from a legal perspective seems pretty strong. It's a legal perspective because that's different from the medical one. Cases like these, in courts like these, you don't have to prove that it's 100% the reason, cause, and effect why these meningiomas appeared. It's all about likelihood. Because, to be fair, proving exact causation, especially for things that some people had removed 10 years ago, is impossible. And if we make that the barrier, a whole lot of people who were legitimately injured because of this wouldn't see any results or consequences from it. That's my spiel on that. If you have questions, I'll be honest, you can put them in a comment, but I am not ethically going to be able to respond to any of them with answers. Probably say a very generic thing like, you should email or message if you want to talk more. You to decide whether or not you want to talk about it. Oh, that's my spiel. Takeaway, these things are still incredibly rare, even with the eye-popping numbers of 500%, still incredibly rare, yet they happen to a lot of people. People that they've happened to, some of them have had their entire courses of their lives changed because of it. Yes, this thing did a whole lot of good, but also it's pretty hard to look someone in the eye who's had their life changed because of it for the worse and say, it was such a low chance though. Can't you appreciate all the good it did for people? I promise you, they probably can, but that does not devalue what they went through, or in many cases, are still going through.